Superstrike with hits lets you click up to 30 milliseconds faster than any other gaming mouse ever made.
Yeah, no, 30 milliseconds faster is just an absurd claim. When we're talking click latency, 30 milliseconds is an eternity. I mean, sure, it's fair to say that the new Superstrike has an incredibly advanced trigger system. Logitech calls this stuff hits, and it works similarly to a Hall effect keyboard or any other analog keyboard really, where you can configure the actuation point however you like. And we all know that analog keyboards can have incredibly low latency. So just like with an analog keyboard, you can configure the buttons on this mouse to be super sensitive, and this is also where the latency benefit is supposed to come from. Logitech really tries to hammer that point in with their marketing. More sensitive buttons mean faster clicks. And Logitech does have a valid point here. But man, that up to 30 millisecond faster claim, how in the world did they come up with this number? See, first of all, this implies that the fastest gaming mice have at least 30 milliseconds of latency to begin with. Like, it's impossible for this mouse to be 30 milliseconds faster than this, when this has like, let's say, 5 milliseconds of latency to begin with. So let's actually test this. See, this is the Viper V4 Pro by Razer, so kind of the arch enemy of the Logitech Superstrike, you could say. And this weird-looking contraption that it's in can measure the end-to-end click latency. So how much click latency does the Viper V4 Pro have? Let's see. That's about 130 milliseconds of click latency. So the 30 millisecond latency advantage seems kind of realistic, right? Yeah, no, I'm kind of baiting you here. This rig measures the actual end-to-end latency. So from the moment the tip of the solenoid makes contact with the mouse button to the moment the click signal is received via USB. And when I move slowly, I can get super high latency numbers. That's because the mouse button doesn't trigger right away. See, there's always some amount of pre-travel, and it takes some time to overcome this distance. And this causes a latency penalty, which gets higher the slower you move your finger, or the solenoid in this case. And this is where Logitech's new trigger system comes in, and the idea behind it actually makes a lot of sense. See, typical latency numbers you find online have a big drawback. They don't tell the whole story and only measure the latency after the mouse switch, so only the latency of the mouse electronics. But your brain is not wired to the MCU of the mouse, you have to press the mouse button, so I have to agree with Logitech here. Pre-travel is an important part of the overall mouse latency. And Logitech really harps on about that in their marketing material, like how this mouse has the fastest clicks and how much just a few milliseconds matter in game. So the pre-travel, or lack thereof, is really what's supposed to make this mouse so fast. Alright, let's pause for a moment to talk about the sponsor of this segment, Maono and their new PD200W microphone, which is the mic I'm using right now. Getting a professional microphone often means you also need to deal with audio interfaces and lots of cables, but the PD200W simplifies that workflow. You can connect it to a pro audio interface via XLR if you really want, but you can also just plug it directly into your PC via USB, or even more practical, go wireless. Right now I actually have the wireless camera receiver plugged in straight into my camera, so there are zero cables in the way. And if you ever need to co-host a video, a single receiver can even handle 2 microphones at once, recording both voices on independent tracks to make editing much easier. The PD200W also naturally rejects background noises like room echo or noisy keyboards. And what you're hearing right now is the raw audio. No noise suppression, no EQ, just pure audio straight from the mic into the camera. If you like what you hear and want a hassle-free mic with professional audio quality, check out the Maono PD200W using the link in the video description. Now back to the video. So what's the big advantage of the Superstrike over the Viper V4 Pro with its traditional micro switches? Well, watch what actually happens when you press the mouse button on the Viper. Before the mouse switch even clicks, you have to push down roughly 0.3 millimeters. You have to physically push the plastic that far before the mouse even starts to think about sending a signal. And yeah, I know, 0.3 millimeters might not sound like much, but this can actually make up the majority of the mouse latency. Now watch what happens when we swap to the Superstrike. Because of that hit system, we can choose how much pre-travel we want. There are 10 different actuation settings, and as you can see on the gauge, every single step translates to roughly 0.07 millimeters of travel. And the most sensitive setting, setting 1, can make that pre-travel almost disappear. It registers a click after moving just 0.16 to 0.17 millimeters. Please mind that this is kinda hard to measure because of the curvature of the mouse buttons, so it might as well be even more sensitive than that. So physically, yes, the Superstrike requires less movement, but here's the multi-million-dollar question. Can saving a fraction of a millimeter actually translate to a 30 millisecond time advantage over the Razer? Let's do the math. And let's be incredibly generous to Logitech. As the Viper V4 Pro wasn't released yet when the Superstrike came out, we're gonna be generous and assume that the competing mouse uses a standard switch that has a whopping 0.5 millimeters of pre-travel. That's basically the maximum pre-travel you find in the datasheets of common microswitches. Let's also pretend my testing wasn't accurate, and the Superstrike would trigger instantly, and not only after 0.16 millimeter, giving Logitech a full 0.5 millimeter head start. So what do you think? How fast does your finger have to move for the Superstrike to have a 30 milliseconds latency advantage? Let me show you. Here's an 8-inch or 20 centimeter ruler. And to make Logitech's numbers work, you have to move this slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I kid you not, 12 seconds to pass this ruler from top to bottom. Who the hell clicks this slow? I don't think anybody does, but you know who probably does click this slow? Logitech's testing robot. Look at this photo I found in a PC Gamer article taken inside Logitech's own testing lab. A good chunk of the display is hidden, but if you look closely, you can see that the display says 11.532 milliseconds for the Superstrike. It's probably safe to assume that this was tested with the most sensitive actuation point, and when you do the math on that number, the testing rig looks to be pressing the mouse button at a speed of roughly 0.0143 meters per second, or in other words, about 14 seconds to pass this ruler. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact testing methodology that Logitech is using here, so this is speculation on my part, but the numbers kinda check out. So if my assumptions are correct, with these slow testing speeds, you only gotta find a mouse that has 0.43 millimeter more pre-travel than the Superstrike, and if you put it on the same rig, you get a 30 millisecond latency advantage and make the marketing department very happy. If that really is how they came up with this number, I'm just speechless. So what happens when we actually test at realistic human click speeds? Watch the monitor here. That's the Viper V4 Pro, and I'm not even trying to click super fast, and yet we're getting in the range of 2 to maybe 3 milliseconds of end-to-end click latency. So you can see right off the bat, there's mathematically zero chance that the Superstrike can be 30 milliseconds faster than this. That's just not gonna happen with normal click speeds. But of course, I'm not consistent enough to use this as a real benchmark, so we're letting the solenoid do the clicking. And as you can see, the results are slightly faster than mine, which is intentional. It's supposed to simulate a fast click in the heat of a match. Just a quick heads up though, I made some modifications to the testing rig, so these new numbers aren't directly comparable to my older videos. Alright, here's the final result for the Viper V4 Pro, and it's just under 2 milliseconds. Now the Superstrike. Out of the box, it's on the default actuation setting 5, and like this, it's actually slower than the Razer. But if we crank that actuation setting all the way up to setting 1, we're getting a different result. Just 1.1 milliseconds. I've gotta hand it to Logitech here. This is extremely impressive. 1.1 milliseconds of real-world latency genuinely makes the Superstrike one of the fastest gaming mice on the market right now. It's certainly the fastest mouse I've tested so far. Is it 30 milliseconds faster than every other gaming mouse ever made? Not by a long shot, but it beats the Viper by about 0.8 milliseconds, which I guess technically is up to 30 milliseconds faster. But there is a catch here you need to know about. See, the Superstrike is on the rig, most sensitive setting, and we're getting that impressive 1.1 milliseconds of click latency. But watch this. Suddenly, the latency shoots up to over 25 milliseconds. What is happening here? Well, when I removed this piece of paper, the sensor lost contact. The mouse now thinks it's being lifted off the mouse pad, and this seems to trigger some kind of energy saving feature. And this increases the latency by a huge margin. And that can actually be a pretty big problem in game. A lot of people lift their mouse slightly when stopping their mouse. It's a popular technique to press the fingertips against the mouse pad and lift the mouse slightly for more stopping power. But every time the sensor detects a lift-off, the latency immediately shoots up. I don't think anyone has really discussed this yet, so I guess I have the opportunity to call this lift-off latency. But to be fair, this lift-off latency isn't new or even exclusive to the Superstrike. Actually, lots of mice do this. See, the Viper V4 Pro does this as well. When I remove this piece of paper, the latency immediately shoots up to the 10 millisecond range. So it's roughly 8 milliseconds slower than before. I tested a bunch of mice and an 8 millisecond latency penalty seems to be the most common. Some mice add less than that, and some mice don't add latency at all, which of course is the best. It's debatable if a few additional milliseconds really matter, but whatever Logitech is doing here is definitely not great. My guess is that this new trigger system consumes quite a bit more energy than traditional microswitches, and this might be some kind of energy saving feature they chose to implement to keep the battery life competitive. And to be fair, the battery life is actually pretty good, which is impressive when you think about that this mouse has to emulate every single click. It's a contactless sensing system, so there is no inherent click resistance. Logitech had to stuff vibration motors inside that engage every single button press to fool your brain. And it actually works surprisingly well. Again, technically very impressive, but it really makes you wonder if it's all worth it. I mean, when you take this mouse off the testing rig and actually play a game with it, it feels more like a compromise than anything else. This mouse essentially feels like a tech demo for Logitech switches and not like a refined, top-of-the-line gaming mouse that it's supposed to be. I mean, the tech inside is very impressive, there's no denying that, but if you zoom out and look at this just as a mouse, it's decent at best. It's relatively heavy, 61 grams, which actually is a lot in today's market, and what puts me off even more is how the weight is distributed. If you try to balance it, you can immediately notice that it's pretty front heavy, probably because of the massive inductive trigger system right under the buttons. The Viper just has a much better, more centered balance. You know, I really have mixed feelings about this mouse. As a YouTuber and tech reviewer, I'm very excited about this. Like, I gave Logitech quite a bit of flack in this video because of their absurd marketing, but I'm actually super stoked that Logitech created this trigger system, and it's awesome that they actually put it into a real product that everyone can buy. I really have to give Logitech credit here. And yes, I also have to acknowledge that there is a small measurable latency advantage thanks to the HIT system. But then, as someone who also just plays a lot of FPS games, this mouse feels kind of pointless and gimmicky, to be honest. As exciting as the tech is by itself, I feel the actual benefits in-game are basically zero. And it almost hurts me to say that. People want to compare this to Hall effect switches and rapid trigger and keyboards, but I feel this is a very different story, and it is nowhere near as useful or game-changing as analog keyboards. Thanks for watching, bis zum nächsten Video.